When we first encounter the idea of suffering, the idea that as human beings we inherently will suffer until death, when we look at this idea in relation to necessity, then we can learn a lot about suffering and about what it means to actually inhabit a human body. So let me start off by saying a man is masculine energy embodied and a woman is feminine energy embodied. So when we see a male and a female, we're not seeing just two physically different beings. We are literally viewing the law of gender funneling itself and playing itself out through the physical. So we then get to the idea of merging the masculine and feminine. It's said that the most harmonious creation occurs when we do that, when we can take the masculine parts of ourselves, meaning the courageous aspects, the adventurous, the action-oriented aspects of ourselves, and merge that with the feminine, which is the passive, the muse, so to speak, the healer. But when we look at a man and a woman, we don't need to look at these energies as metaphorical. We can literally see the male energy and the female energy come together, and this is necessary in order to create a child. So we have this trinity, the man, the woman, and the child. And this is a reflection of the necessity of breaking ourselves into man and woman. Even in the spiritual community, there's a lot of talk about becoming androgynous. And I'm telling you, this is not really productive because you cannot be in creation if the law of the land is androgyny, physical androgyny. So if I'm going to plummet into a realm, say Earth, if I'm going to encase myself in this 3D creation, then I need to make sure there's a way for other people to participate in this game as well. Because if there's not that opportunity, well, it's not really a dynamic realm. So in order to make sure other people, other souls, other parts of spirit have the ability to enter Earth, we have males and females who have complementary yet opposite physical parts and energies and mental energies, which necessarily come together in order to allow more spirit to funnel into this realm. So creation doesn't happen unless the divided opposites are coming together in sacred union. This creates kind of an awkward situation for us because we're told that duality is the cause of much suffering, if not all suffering. But it is duality playing itself out on the physical earthly stage. It is only by that mechanism that we actually have creation. I'm literally proposing that unless we have male and female, we do not have creation. But in order to have male and female, we need to separate consciousness into two containers that must come together in order to fulfill not only that physical action of procreation, but also the inner alchemy. It's this beautiful but confusing mess. We want to experience highs and lows and contrasts, and we want to compare how one thing feels against another thing. We want to be able to experience the depths of destruction and the highs of salvation. And why do we do this? Well, it's because creation itself is that dramatic. It's that dramatic because in order to get into creation, in order to create the conditions where spirit could actually come into a realm like this, we had to make some sacrifices. And one of those sacrifices, you could say, was foregoing any androgyny, splitting ourselves into opposing halves which need each other. And that's a very interesting concept, that two beings need each other in order to sustain something most effective and productive for society. It's beautiful. And the reason we have this necessity is because inherently we feel estranged from our opposite half. So we already feel broken and like we're not embodying the fullness of our dual gendered nature. And this is why love and romance is the main topic of discussion in most art, because this is the primary drama that's happening. It is the drama of trying to reconcile this feeling of brokenness, of fragmentation, trying to piece that together. Now, relationships also are full of pain, because after all, everything on this earthly plane, if it consists of pleasure, if it's worth pursuing, then it also contains a great deal of pain. And so a relationship which produces a child, which creates life, literally, is inherently going to be full of suffering. And because a child is being produced, birth and death is now in the mix even more so. There's another birth, and there will now be another death because there's another birth. So that is kind of confusing. It's like we've produced a child that's temporarily going to be here and might have a very productive, meaningful existence. But he or she is going to die. And in some sense, that is your fault. Like, I guess we could get into religious or spiritual ideas about reincarnation and who really chooses how events unfold, but for all intents and purposes, you created this child and its fate is your fault. And we see what children go through. I mean, even if you look a few hundred years ago when there wasn't a crazy New World Order agenda, at least glaring at us as it is right now, even then, being a child was not always the happiest. And the fact is, being a human just isn't always the happiest. So, it's this weird idea I'm trying to express, that gender and suffering and duality are all in the same basket and they require each other. And existence is, I guess, the container, if you will, because without any of these elements working hand in hand like I'm describing, you can't have existence. You need a mechanism for more spirit to crawl into a realm. It's like if you go into a multiplayer game or you're playing some video games, you want to leave some controllers open, or you want to let your friends know how to log into the game. So it's literally not possible to jump into a realm and make the law of the land androgyny. You need some gendered aspect. You need some gendered aspect in order to birth more creation into a realm. Now, if we move away from men and women and we look at something like our thoughts or our actions, how can we identify these things as masculine or feminine? And how I like to see it is masculinity is full of order, is full of regulation, whereas feminine energy is full of chaos and uncertainty and spontaneity, rather. And so we have that balance between order and chaos that produces the most exciting and stable existence. And this is a really tough balance to achieve. Most of us never learn how to do this 100%. It's like you want things to be organized and in order and predictable, but at the same time, you want to be able to enjoy yourself, which would be injecting some chaos, and you want to be able to have some spontaneity with life, because if you're not flexible, then there's nothing you can do here. So we have this decision to make at all times. It's whether to apply more order or more chaos to a situation. We're obsessed with love. We're obsessed with needing each other. And that, I would say, is the condition of all beings, not just humans. All beings need each other. And it's natural to us to need each other, and I would say this is completely aligned with gender, because we needed to split into gender to exist, and now we search for each other because each other is really ourselves. And it's this complicated allegory that we can't really overthink, because then we might get too scientific. Like, I understand it doesn't make much sense that everybody else is you. But if you look at yourself as the measurement of the universe, and everyone else as a fractal of you, you realize it's all the same game being played out. So how amazing is it that we can feel lonely and that we can need each other? It's the product of suffering. Because when we need things, when we have desire, we suffer. And it's easy to say that I can get rid of my desire and therefore I don't need anybody. But that is an oxymoron of existence. The fact that we need to be sovereign and individual, but we also need each other so dearly. So no man is an island, and that is what gender, really looking into it, that's what it tells me.